I think the core understanding is knowing that manifesting and the ability to manifest is not, you don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Bianca Taylor podcast. Today's guest is super special and dear to my heart. She is not just my best friend and sister from another mister, but she's actually somebody who I've run coaching programs with. We've coached hundreds of women together in our Embodied Babe programs. She is a certified life coach that specializes in women's confidence, a Reiki practitioner. We actually also did our Reiki certification together, so we have a super deep spiritual bond. And she's also a director at latech.org, which is a nonprofit. So I'm so stoked to introduce Miss MariaLuisa Ferro.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
What a great introduction. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to just start off by sharing a little bit about your background, introducing you to everyone who doesn't know you or what you do. How did you come to become so passionate about helping people? Because you help people in different ways, coaching, nonprofit space.
Yes. Yeah, great question. Definitely feels like it's my life's mission and purpose. So I was born and raised in Brussels in Belgium. My father is Italian and my mother is Finnish, but she grew up in the UK, hence the accent. I also spent 12 years in London, so that's why I've got a very strong British accent. I feel as though ever since I was a little kid, anything that was around injustice used to infuriate me. And I think this is really the combination of my Aquarius, sun and moon, and my Leo rising. So, which means that Aquarians technically are supposed to be very passionate about human rights and
The collective.
and they're them and Libras are known as the progressive signs. They always want to move society forward, and then obviously Leos are extremely passionate. So that together, like I remember I was age 4 or 5 feeding ducks, and then my mum had made duck for dinner. And I was like, what? I was just playing with that duck. I don't think that duck wants to be eaten. Like it just, or anytime I would watch anything to do and I saw any form of injustice, it used to really, really upset me. And I just thought injustice is so like revolting. I also had a really conscious mother who used to explain things to me and was very good at explaining deep entrenched systemic oppressions such as sexism and homophobia and racism. So I think with those two combined, it really helped me understand the world. And I just thought, well, what's the point of me being here unless I'm doing good? And so what that looked like was when I was 15, actually, I organized a fashion show at my school. And it was around, all the profits went to an orphanage in Romania. And that was kind of the start of me working in the nonprofit space or understanding what that looks like. And so actually my first ever job was a corporate job when I was like 21, 22. It was my first job outside of university. And I hated it. I really did not like it. It didn't suit me. It didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't see a purpose. And from that day onwards, I've only worked in the nonprofit space, usually nonprofit or local government space, and usually with human rights, women's rights, something to do with making the world, obviously, a more equitable place. And so I did that. What I noticed, and this was 4 or 5 years ago, another huge passion of mine is self-development, right? And I do really believe that if you work on yourself and heal parts of yourself, that can transpire and help heal the community and the collective. So because of that, I actually did a life coaching certification a couple of years ago, many years ago actually now. And at first it was just for fun. At first I was like, you know what, let's just see where this goes, where this takes me. Worst case scenario, I'm going to learn a bunch of tools. But actually I just absolutely loved it. And then through that, I started to get clients, and it was like, you know, at first it was very, very small, and then it was all these referrals. And then it became this thing where now where I am today is I work for this incredible nonprofit that is actually what they do is they support LA's underserved communities by creating career pathways. So basically within the tech community. So LA's tech community is very privileged still, and it's very exclusive, and it's only caters for really people of the privileged few. And so what we do is we create these career pathways for young people and students from underserved communities to have a chance at a career in tech. So now where I am is I'm doing this, I'm a director of this nonprofit, and I'm also able to help people one-on-one, help women specifically, but I work with all sorts of people one-on-one or in a group setting, so that I get to help on a policy level, on a wider level, right, helping people in that capacity, but also the one-on-one capacity, which I think is so, so important, and it just feels incredibly fulfilling.
That's amazing. And I think that is a really good example of following your heart and your intuition and your calling and feeling satisfied in your career path, because I know a lot of people do what they think is going to make them a lot of money, or what they think they're supposed to do, or what they think their parents want them to do, and it doesn't feel fulfilling for them. And years go by, and then they end up having to make a career change or staying in this miserable position. So I think your background of knowing from a young age, okay, I do not like injustice. I want to help people. I want to be a voice for people who don't have as much privilege as myself. And I also like helping people with self-development tools and healing. And you've continued to follow that. And I've seen it in the time that we've known each other, from you growing as a coach, growing in the nonprofit space. And it's really cool to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you. I really like what you said there. And I do want to say that I do really want to pick that out. I did grow up privileged. So I had a very interesting upbringing where I had one parent who grew up not privileged at all, extremely poor, my father. And so his narrative with me was always like, get the job that gets you the most money. He was really upset when I told him I didn't want to be a doctor. And even though I was quite good at science at school. But then I had the other parent who grew up privileged herself, which was my mother, who just said, do whatever you want, do what your heart tells you to do, just be really good at it. Whatever you are, just hone your skill, hone your practice. And I was lucky that I myself grew up privileged, because I didn't feel, you know, I had the privilege to say no to that corporate job, because of course that corporate job paid me a lot better than my nonprofit work. But I had the privilege to say, no, there's something bigger and there's something better for me out there. But I do want to say that, you know, not everyone has that privilege and has that pathway, and you can get there. Like you're someone who is extremely inspirational in that specific space, where you show that you don't have to grow up privileged in order to actually do your heart's purpose, but there are serious blockages to overcome.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great comparison as well, because a lot of people might look at my social media and success as an entrepreneur and assume that I had always some sense, like I definitely did have more privilege than a lot of people in the world. Of course, I was born in the United States. I was a second generation immigrant. My dad is an immigrant, and I did not go to college because I couldn't afford it. And I started to, and the student debt was racking up, and I thought, one, I don't like school, and two, I don't want to get in debt. It is a scary situation. So definitely a lot of people feel that pressure of what they are, you know, what they're limited to based on the cards that they've been dealt. So yeah, I think that's a really good comparison that you made. And one thing too that I want to share is that a lot of people who meet myself and MariaLuisa think that we have been friends for so long, and they think that we grew up together, and we've only known each other for how long now?
A year and a half.
A year and a half. And we've become so freaking close. And we've really developed this like deep sisterhood bond because when we met, we were going through the exact same thing. We were both going through heartbreak. We both were going through our breakups. Everyone knows about my breakup because I've been very public with it. And she was also going through a breakup of the same exact length of time, 3.5 years, right? Of a breakup. And that was when we met through my longtime best friend, Jordan.
Love you, Jordan.
Love you, Jordan. And we connected. And I think that something we can talk a little bit about is creating those sisterhood bonds in adulthood, because you and I know a lot of our female clients within Embodied Babe, that's what they're craving. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for that deep, soulful friendship. And it is hard to find as an adult.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. I was really lucky in that I could make friends pretty easily, especially I'm going to go from teenage years. So I actually, something I don't share actually that often is I was quite badly bullied from the age of 10 to around maybe 12. And it was bullied by one specific person. I was bullied by someone who was my best friend. And I think some girls can talk about that. It's a very interesting dynamic. It's not an obvious bully. It's like they're your best friend.
Regina George syndrome.
Yeah. But I didn't even think that was a term for it. Exactly.
I mean, I made that up just now.
But
the Queen Bee syndrome, right?
Exactly.
She bosses you around and you become her servant, but you want to please her so desperately.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was exactly it. And she would, it got to a point where, it was really, really awful. And, she would say horrible things to my face, say horrible things about me online, say horrible things to other people, bully me constantly, and actually stole from me at the end. And after that, I've actually been very, very lucky in that I've maintained and had really good friendships throughout my teenage years, yes, but specifically at university, I met people who are just incredible in my life and have been for 12, 13 years. So I feel very, very lucky in that capacity. And moving to the United States in 2019, October 2019, all my friends kept saying the same thing. They were like, oh, but you're so sociable and you're so you're such an extrovert, you'll make friends. And I got it and I was like, yeah, sure. And I kind of felt that. And then I got to the US and I realized, oh, I don't want friends. Because I met people. They were right. I did go out. I did do a lot of events. I met Jordan at that random event that I randomly said yes to, at that random day. But I made friends, but none of them felt like that soulful, like, oh my God, I've known you for like my whole life, like friendship that I have actually with my friends back home. Until I met you. But it was such a process because I realized I don't want friends. I want sisters. I want soulful sisters. And it was after my breakup, obviously, that when we met. So it was like after I'd like basically the universe closed the door on a relationship and opened me wide open to others. And I was writing and journaling about this so much and really manifesting this kind of soulful sisterhood that I really craved. And in a way, I was like, but I want the process to be sped up. Like, I don't just want to have a good friend. I want to have someone that I've known for ages. And how does that look like if you haven't actually known each other for ages? And then, and then I met you.
We created that.
And I think we bonded over, so many things, but also because we would be going through the same thing and we were so vulnerable with each other.
So open. We were so open. And I think that's a huge piece when you're an adult and you're seeking deep, soulful friendships. Ask yourself where your blockages are around that. Do you really have an open heart to new people? Are you judging people immediately when you meet them and judging yourself and immediately thinking, I'm not going to share this or that because then they might think that I'm this and that. And you're immediately showing up to relationships with a mask on. And so you can't get that deep. And you can't see if you are really that aligned or not. Because if you're not, then you're not, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to waste time on that friendship. But if you are and you both show up with open hearts, which is what you and I did, and it was also a part of going through breakups, but also you were looking for that I was looking for that as well because I had gone through a friendship breakup earlier that year, and it made me really reanalyze my female friendships and realize how was I showing up to friendships? Could I be a better friend? Could I be more open-hearted? And I wanted to call that in, and then we, like two magnets in the universe, found each other.
We definitely did. And the nice thing that I will say is we still put in time to nourish and to help the friendship flourish. Poem. But like what in the sense that we both of us, you know, it was like that. There was this like magnetic connection immediately, but then both of us, you know, took the time to nurture it and to stay in contact and to stay vulnerable with each other and to see each other frequently and all of this. So it was able to build. It just built very quickly because of how vulnerable and how open we were both willing to be with the other person.
Totally.
At that point, I was like, I have fucking nothing left to lose. So I was just so open. Like, yeah, I was very open-hearted. And you made a really good point there of also knowing when someone's not for you, right, is a big thing because our energy is so sacred. And if we're spending a lot of time and energy on a friendship that feels draining or doesn't feel like a real friendship, it's so important to close that door because otherwise you're just getting drained and there's no opportunity to be open with someone else. And that's something that I've learned is, you know, I've had to close the door on many friendships and been like, sorry, I don't have capacity for this because it's not for me. Yeah.
And being honest with yourself, which is hard. It is hard.
Really hard.
Friendship breakups sometimes can feel harder than romantic breakups, but being honest with yourself will allow you to have room for more of what you want. And that's how you can start to cultivate those deep, meaningful adulthood relationships. And another piece as well is really dropping your ego when it comes to building friendships, because a lot of us show up, we meet people, and then we think, oh, well, I texted them and it's been a day and they haven't texted me back. Or I'm not going to text them. I don't want them to think I'm weird. So I'll just wait if they hit me up. And then they're thinking the same thing. And then you never hit each other up. And then a friendship that could have been never got to even get started. Yeah. So just dropping your ego. And that was one thing that when you and I started to become friends is that we checked in on each other. How's your day going? Oh, I'm having a hard day about the breakup. Do you want to talk about it? Let's go get lunch. Let's do a workout together. Let's go to the beach. Like whatever random things we felt like doing, we were just open and showing up to that. And I realized that in the past, I hadn't really done that fully and honestly. I think I had just started to show up to friendships that way, probably that year because of experiencing a friendship breakup and asking myself, have I been a shitty friend? So that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to show up to friendships. When I resonate with somebody, I'm going to let them know I think that they're awesome. I want to support them. I'm going to check in on them every day. And I'm going to try to be a good friend. And if you do that, you can start to build deep, meaningful relationships as an adult.
Definitely. And also, like you said, like checking in, like another thing that I've really realized is how much you can overcome, just by completely open communication. And when you'll know this, there'll be times where I'll just check in on you. I'll be like, is everything okay? And like, I'll just, obviously sometimes I feel something very strongly and you're like, no, it's not. How did you know? But also checking in on your friends. If you like, instead of being like, oh, are they being non-communicative because they're busy or is it because they're angry at me? Like you can ask that question.
Yeah.
You can be open and ask that question, and you can ask it in a way that's, oh, well, I'm scared about being needy. You can ask it in a way that's not needy at all. You know, you can really get to know that person and really get vulnerable with them.
The same way that we all stress communication for romantic relationships. Communication is key. It's everything. It's the same for all relationships. It's the same for your friendships as well. And that's something that has allowed my close adulthood friendships to flourish, is to confront situations when you can sense there's tension, saying, hey, I realize that when I said this thing yesterday, it may have upset you or offended you. Please understand this is where I was coming from. Can we talk about it? Do you need me to hold space for you? Yeah, I was really angry. That hurt my feelings. I'm so sorry. Can you please forgive me? I promise I won't do that again. Cool. Let's move on.
Yeah.
That's how you have lifelong friendships.
Yes.
And we're not taught how to build friendships or relationships as children. We're not taught that in school. And some of us are really lucky to have great examples of it when we're children, and a lot of us are not. Same with romantic relationships, right? So building communication skills that you transfer not just to romantic relationships, but also with your friendships is going to make your friendships thrive. And it's something that I've experienced so much of in the past 2 years of my life, and I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, no, same. I think it's so important, and people don't talk about it enough at all.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about self-development stuff because that's something that we also bonded over. And for a little bit of the background for you guys listening, when I met MariaLuisa, she had already been a life coach for some time. And I started the Embodied Babe, I think a couple months prior. And I had been doing only one-on-one coaching and I wanted to do a group. But I am somebody who loves co-collaborating. That's why I did vegan fitness with Nimai and Steven and veg. And I love working with other minds. And I thought, okay, I need to find another coach that really resonates with me. And then I met her and we're resonate in everything, the way that we eat. We're both vegan, we're feminists, we care about the collective, we care about, authentic confidence. And it was just a perfect match. And I asked her, do you want to create a coaching program with me? And she said yes. And we started doing that. And it's been really fun to work together as well. And yeah, so I want to kind of talk about that space a little bit and just the importance of self-development for people who have not started that journey.
Definitely. And I love what you said there. And I think, because yeah, I agree with you. I think when we first met, I was like, oh yeah, it'd be so cool to do a coaching program with them. And then as I saw you and you work, and you're such a great coach, like just holding space for people the way you do, I was like, yes. I've made the right decision here. Like I'm the same as you. I love co-collaborating. I don't think that we should exist in this mindset of doing everything alone. I do think we belong in a collective, in a community for a reason. We are sociable animals. And I also want to say that it does work for you to go in business or to do business with a friend. Like it does. Like when you have the honest and open communication, it actually works. As with us and the Embodied Babe, it works so well. It feels so natural. It feels so free. And we're open to having difficult discussions and everything. And we hold each other to the highest regard. That being said, I think that's why people do invest in the Embodied Babe, because they see that, right? They see the ability to create a business, which, a lot of people have blocks over, to create one that's successful, to work with other people, to create sisterhood. And for people who are just starting on that journey, that can be extremely triggering. I want to almost start with that. Like self-development isn't
sunshine and rainbows.
No, and it's not self-care. It's not like, oh, I'm going to take a bath. Like these are really important elements of self-care, but that's not self-development. Self-development is like ugly crying, like releasing a lot of energy. It's like it's getting radically honest with yourself and being radically aware of yourself at the beginning. That's fucking hard.
It is. And that is a really good place to start, is the triggers or activations that come up when you start your self-development journey and what that could look like for everybody. We're talking about coaching because that's what we do and we're passionate about. And both of us have had lots of different coaches, and I see the value in coaching. I think coaching is such an important element of your self-development journey. There's other elements as well, right? You can go to therapy. That's more for like deep trauma work, things around your mental health. That's what therapy is for. You have self-development books as well, which is a great place to start if you have a little bit of fear or hesitancy around self-development. You could start with reading some books and taking notes and trying your best to apply them. Of course, the book's not going to hold you accountable for doing the work, but a coach will. So that's why we love coaching. Those are just some ways. And then it comes to doing the work, and doing the work looks like when the trigger comes up, changing your pattern that you have from when you were a child or a teen, or from that bad relationship that scarred you, or from the dynamic you adopted from your parents' unhealthy relationship. And it's like when you're doing the coaching or you're reading the book and taking the notes and you're doing all of that, that's like the training. That's you in the dojo practicing, doing your rounds. And then when the trigger comes up, right? For example, since we're talking about friendships, I'll use one of my examples was when that friend dumped me at the beginning of 2020 and straight up said, I don't want to be your friend anymore. Somebody who I thought was my best friend. That was it. That was the text. I don't want to be your friend anymore. That moment, the ugly crying, self-worth, what could I have done differently? She doesn't like me because I'm not good enough, inadequacy, all of those wounds coming up. Me dealing with that, that's doing the work. Reading the books and all that stuff, that's the training, you know? So if you want to share a little bit about okay, so you get the trigger, it comes up, and then what happens next?
And then what happens next? So, well, depends on how much work you've done or how much you've started your journey, right? But when you get the trigger, something happens, you feel these feelings of inadequacy, these feelings of a lack of self-worth. The first step and foremost step, which is probably, I would say, the most important, is that awareness. Just bring that awareness and being like, okay. Just simply the awareness of, I'm not feeling good.
Yeah, what's happening?
I'm thinking all these really negative thoughts, because that's the thing is we then so often before we've done the work is we feel like we've become the negative thoughts. We become the negative feelings. Almost like we can't differentiate ourselves from the experience, right? And there are two selves. There's two of us. Like, I love myself is saying there's an I and there's a myself. So if I'm going through an experience, that's an experience. That experience is going to end, you know, but that experience is going to end, but we need to go through it. So the first and foremost is really that bringing that awareness. Okay. And that's why journaling is such a great tool, right? Okay, well, how am I feeling? Writing down, processing all the feelings that are coming up. Like you said, lack of worth, extreme sadness, loss, grief, all the feelings that you can identify. Okay, what thoughts am I having around this? You know, and identify those thoughts. And as soon as you can do that, you can actually take yourself out of that situation and recognize that that is what I'm experiencing and that's what's happening. That's not me all the time, you know? And that's when you can realize, oh, I'm not worthless all the time. I am feeling a lack of worth currently. That's the truth. And asking yourself, like, okay, what are these feelings? What are these thoughts I'm having? Out of these, which are actually true? Can I think of tangible examples of how these are not true? You know, so I think having that awareness is the first step. And going from there's, perhaps there's extra support that's needed, hoping that you have like already a support system, whether it is for sure like a therapist, a coach. If it's relatively surface level, it's a friend. But having those tools, those techniques, and that support is so important to go through the emotions and not around it. Because before I got into development, I would suppress, push down, go around, anything but through. And now it's like, okay, I have to go through this. I can't just push it to the side anymore. Yeah.
And when you continue to suppress all of those feelings, it's going to eventually come up.
Yeah, it does.
Some way it can come up through feeling depressed. It can be an explosion of anger. It can be, behavior that is self-destructive, like drinking, partying excessively. There's so many different ways that it comes up. And when you start to do the work, when you start to really commit to doing self-development work, and you start to have that process of awareness around the trigger, just going back to my example, okay, my friend just dumped me. Right now I'm feeling really sad. I'm feeling a lack of self-worth. I feel like I'm not good enough. Then the next part is when you understand that you have those feelings that come up when you get triggered by, things in life that you can't control. It's now, how do I create a new narrative? A narrative that is true with more self-awareness, so that the next time, because since that moment, of course, I experienced other things in life that triggered that deep, I'm not good enough wound that we all struggle with. And so then the key is that when that comes up, I can identify it. I'm like, this is I call it the inadequacy wound. It helps me to put names to it. This is my inadequacy wound. it's coming up to the surface right now, and I'm going to move through it by doing these self-loving tactics, by reaching out to my therapist for an extra session, by talking to my coach and having my coach me through it, and creating a new pattern. Because the old me would feel a lack of inadequacy, and I would get triggered and spiraled into disordered eating habits. I just would not want to eat because I didn't feel worthy of food. It wasn't even, it had nothing to do with my physical image. It was just, I don't want to eat. It was like a self-punishment. And now when those feelings come up and I don't feel worthy and I don't feel good enough, and that old pattern that lives in there says, oh, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel worthy of food. My new narrative is, I'm aware of that, and I absolutely am worthy of everything that I want and desire, and I'm going to nourish my body and take care of myself. And that's how I've moved through that particular, I'm just giving an example that I feel like is really relatable, because I think that so many people
super relate. I mean, everyone has that I'm not enough, right?
Yeah,
Everyone has that at the core. If you look at a lot of the wounds that we have, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not athletic enough, I'm not intelligent enough. It's all comes from I'm not enough. That's the core. And it's also important to mention that, yes, exactly what you said. A trigger is exactly that. It's something that comes up as a reminder. That's usually not the founding event. The event probably happened before the age of 4, most certainly happened before the age of 7.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from. That first idea that we have that we're not enough through usually our parents. It could be other caregivers, something that happens from a very young age where you realize like, oh, I have to change myself in order for other people around me to be happy, or I have to act like this, or else my caregivers are going to leave me. And now why it's such a deep wound is because as children, our parents are our life force, right? Especially our mothers. We look at our mothers as though they're our whole world, because they are. Because as a baby, if your mother leaves, you won't survive technically, you can, but in the animal world, you wouldn't survive. So it's kind of, you view your parents as your whole world. If they leave, if they abandon you, you don't survive. So in childhood, when you're getting punished, or they get overly angry at you, or they can say things to you, you don't take that as, oh, like mom and dad are just angry. You take that as in like, oh my God, like I'm not good enough and I might die. That's why it's such a deep set wound. So it's important understanding that. And that's why one of the key things that, we go into a lot as well, and that, with our clients and everything, is really looking after your inner child, right? Understanding that most of the times with these wounds of I'm not enough, or I don't want to do this, it's your inner child that exists within you, your small self that's like calling the shots. It's having a tantrum. It's feeling really unworthy. It's feeling really sad. And it's really about carrying them. And that's why sometimes when I'm feeling an extra level of low, or I need that extra kind of support, I actually just go back to basics. Like you're mentioning food. I go back to the basics and I'm like, okay, and I treat myself as though I'm a 4-year-old. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's make sure you've had a nutritious meal tonight. Let's put you to bed nice and early. Let's make sure that you're, well taken care of in that sense, like a child. And then you can build up again and, go to work or whatever. But whatever it is, you just might need those few hours or that day where you're like, okay, like, how can I treat myself as though I'm that, as how can I treat my inner child with the utmost respect?
Yeah. And that gives such a deeper, juicier meaning to self-care. Because self-care is not just having a skincare routine and taking an Epsom salt bath. Those are elements of it, like you mentioned before, but it's really being gentle and compassionate with yourself in that moment and asking yourself, what do I need? What can I do to make myself feel loved and nourished in this moment? That also breaks that old pattern that was very self-deprecative. That pattern that said, I'm not enough, and I'm going to be self-destructive or self-sabotage right now because I know I'm not enough. Instead, saying I am enough, and I'm going to go into my new pattern now, which is putting myself to bed early after I have a nice meal of my favorite food, waking up early, meditating, doing some stretches so that I feel good, and spending time with my best friend tomorrow.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like for you.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't withhold food from a child.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't go out partying until 3 a.m. knowing that you have to get up early the next day. You wouldn't say that's a great idea for a child to do. So the inner child technique is just really good when people are feeling very lost as to what to do. You know, you can get through this and you can just feel these emotions. And sometimes after once you've, that's why we really recommend the journaling through the trigger, right? That helps with processing the emotions. Processing the emotions, going through the trigger, feeling the feelings, understanding the thoughts, bringing that awareness. Okay. And then sometimes you're just left and you're like, you can still feel those things. And you're, well, what do I do now? Go back into yourself and be like, okay, if I was, you are an adult and there's a child inside of you, your inner child. What's going to be best for that child now?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to slightly shift the conversation in a way that it connects with manifestation, because we created a new course on manifestation. And the reason why is because self-development is such a crucial part in creating the life that you deeply desire. And I realized that several years ago when I was at my rock bottom, my lowest of lows. I was sleeping on the floor in a friend's house. I had no money. My parents couldn't help me because my parents were not, in a financial place where they could help me. And I had no car. I mean, I was at the lowest of lows, but I decided I was going to start working on myself. And I really, really believed in the concept of the law of attraction. And I found how they so effortlessly intertwined, because when you feel like you love yourself and you do deserve to take care of yourself and everything that you were just mentioning, you allow yourself to feel worthy of receiving. When you feel worthy of receiving, then you can start to create the things that you want in your life, physical and non-physical. I'm not just talking about money and cars and houses. That stuff is great. That stuff is really nice to have. I'm talking about friendships, right? We manifested our friendship, right? Manifesting your other types of community members, or different levels of love in your life, or feelings of confidence. I wanted to be a confident, badass woman who was independent, and that was not me at the time. That was not me at the time, but I started with self-development and also studying the law of attraction. This was almost 8 years ago now that I started reading Napoleon Hill and Abraham Hicks and all that jazz. And yeah, and there's this cross point with creation, right? Deliberate creation, aka law of attraction or manifestation, and self-development. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh, they're completely linked. Like, they're completely linked. I think the core understanding is knowing that manifesting and the ability to manifest is not, you don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. You're constantly manifesting. Here, right now, sitting with you, I'm manifesting just so effortlessly and so naturally. And that's why self-development and manifestation is so linked, because if you have all these blockages, right, these emotional blockages, these ideas, these thoughts that are kind of blocking you from achieving your potential, that you're only going to manifest up to, it looks like this. Like you're trying to manifest, but there's this block, right? Yeah. Whereas, like, imagine you remove that block and then it's like, wow, it suddenly becomes limitless. And that's what all of us on this earth are, limitless. So it's so important to breaking down, understanding, recognizing, breaking down those blockages, and then having that limitless, I don't even want to say viewpoint, I want to say limitless feeling, because manifesting is so deeply entrenched in feeling. Yeah, which is why it's such a big component of the divine feminine is manifesting, right? Because it's drenched in feelings. You can say to people all day long until you're blue in the face, I'm going to make $1 million this year. I'm going to make $1 million this year. If you don't feel like you are.
Yeah. And it can be as simple as, if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to do it, right? If you're at the gym and you tell yourself, I cannot pick up this weight. I know I can't pick up this weight. I'm way too weak to pick up this weight. Then guess what? You're going to struggle. And there is of course a chance that maybe you will pick up the weight, because deep down inside, you knew you could.
You knew you could, yeah.
You knew you could, and you knew that your body was capable of it, right? But we all know that the mind leads and our body follows.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why if you feel like you hear the word law of attraction or manifestation and you immediately have this resistance, this little cringe factor, you're not alone. A lot of people feel like that as well. And we can simplify it to, if you believe in yourself and you take aligned action, then you will cultivate that thing that you want, right?
Yeah.
That's essentially a really basic way to explain it. It's the feeling, like you said, you attract what you are, not what you want. So when you feel like you are somebody who will make $1 million this year and you take the aligned action, which is a symptom of the feeling, right? I feel like someone who's going to make $1 million. What does somebody who makes $1 million do? And you start doing those aligned actions based on that feeling. You have the feeling first, then the thing will be manifested.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the two main blockages to manifesting is what we've basically spoken about, which is one, a misunderstanding, right? People may feel a certain aversion to manifesting because they don't really understand it. So they're like, oh, isn't that just wishful thinking? You know, and it's like, no, but not at all. But I think a lot of people have a big misunderstanding of it. And then also, like you said, there's deep blockages of like worthiness and understanding and seeing where that comes from. And
I would actually add a third one too. And the third one is in believing and accepting everything that you've been taught. If you believe everything that you've been taught, if you eat according to the food commercials that are advertised on the TV, will you be the healthiest person in the room? Probably not. But if you do your own diligence to learn about nutrition a little bit more, you're probably not going to only eat fast food, right? Because when you watch the TV, what are we taught to eat on TV?
Well, yeah, actually, there was a really great, I'm digressing slightly, there's a really great quote one time that was like, the food you should eat are the ones that are not marketable.
Yeah. Where's the commercial for
an apple?
For fucking apples and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not, I mean, and there are like, you know, boards, international boards for all of the different produce and things of that nature. And of course we have farmers markets at a lot of different places, but I was just using that as an example to say, just to tack on a third point to what you were saying, is that it's also what you've been taught. Because a lot of us have been taught that you are only capable of achieving whatever is in your limits based on the family you were born into, the privilege you were born into, your circumstance, right? So you grow up and you have your parents maybe drilling that back into your head saying, you know, we don't come from much. This is the best that we can do.
Yeah.
So you believe that narrative and so that you continue to create that narrative in your life.
Oh, and you see that because you see people who have made a lot of money and then suddenly, but they're constantly in a scarcity mindset and suddenly their money's gone because they're terrified of losing it. Or it's either gone or it's severely decreased.
Right.
It definitely hasn't increased even though they've had a lot of money.
Right. But they believe that they still are that person who's not worthy of or capable of making and maintaining that much money. So if they do make that much money, then they struggle to maintain it or manage it properly or save because they don't believe that they are the kind of person that can have X amount of dollars in their bank account. So they follow through by, you know, spending it or giving it away or losing it or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Just like unwise investments or whatever it is. It's like the action around it wasn't aligned. It wasn't inspired. And I think what you're saying is so interesting because I know we've had a chat recently about this. And I think that you can speak to this much better than I can around people who argue that, you know, there are certain blocks, systemic blocks, cultural blocks, blocks due to capitalism as to why manifesting millions can't work and all of this. And I think it's so interesting because my point of view on this is as someone who, you know, is an anti-capitalist and doesn't think that capitalism is the way forward at all. I view manifesting as a direct, like, I don't know how to say this, like revolutionary movement against capitalism, because capitalism is based on the notion that people will always stay, that in order for the rich people to carry on being rich, there has to be a certain amount of people that don't have very much. And I view manifesting very much as being an expansion of like, actually, no, like that's not the case. And like, we can achieve like social justice. Because that's the other thing, is people forget about the inspired and aligned action with it, right? So it's like they forget about the action that goes with the manifesting. But yeah, I would love also to hear your point of view on this, because it's so interesting of people who talk about these like systemic blocks, but then, and then they're like, oh, well, okay, yeah, well, you could be a manifester if you come from this privilege, but not if you come from this one. But again, that's kind of ignoring the whole point of manifesting.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we talked about it the other day because, I've been talking about manifestation on my Instagram, and somebody who follows me replied to my story and said, I love you. I've been following you for a long time, but I think that this is not okay, because there are, systemic, blocks for certain people. And I said, yeah, I totally understand that perspective. And I did not grow up with money, and not just that, but with a handicapped father who is an immigrant. Both my parents don't have college educations. I had to start working as soon as I was legally old enough to, so that I could have money to get to school and pay for lunch and survive essentially. And not just that, but I am Latina. I realize that I am white presenting. I have a very light complexion, and a lot of people think that I'm white. And I have a lot of white people always think that I'm white, and so they talk about white privilege to me, and I totally understand, because there is a certain privilege that comes with my appearance and my complexion. And I've also experienced, being called names for my culture my entire life, even today online. So anyways, all of that aside, when I received this DM, it did give me a reflective moment. But what I didn't understand was, if we're going to say that, then what we are saying is that people who are born into horrible, shitty, underprivileged, hard situations, that they just have to take the cards that they're dealt, that there is no hope for them. That seems like a horrible solution, in my opinion. What if somebody who was born into a situation that was not extremely privileged, using the concept of manifestation here, decided that they wanted to manifest being successful, or let's just say going to college. They wanted that, and they felt like, I'm going to be the first person in my family to go to college or to have a job that pays 6 figures, or whatever that vision looked like. And they embodied that, and they felt like that. And so as they felt like that, inspired action followed, whatever that looked like. And I'm using me as an example. I started working when I was 15. I started my first business when I was 17, and I was hustling. Like, I was designing flyers for a dance studio that I was working for, going to the mall, handing them out, hiring my friends to do it. And I was doing that because I felt inspired as somebody who was destined to be successful. And I decided that for myself. That was not thrust upon me. According to a lot more of my background that I haven't shared publicly because it's a little too sensitive. Maybe I'll share it one day. I should not be in the position that I'm in today, but the inspired action followed because of the feelings that I embodied. And I created success, and I took that success and turned it into more success. And of course, my journey's been like this. It's not been perfect. And that's just one example of what you were saying of, yes, there are, like, we're all born into different situations. And I'm not saying this bypassing people that are born into extreme poverty in third world countries at all.
No, exactly. And so much of it as well, you can see, is based on the beliefs that maybe they've been given by other people, right? It's like, you know, it's like, why are so many people who are extremely privileged extremely depressed? You know, like it doesn't mean anything. Like this monetary stuff, we place such a huge importance on monetary things, and it is extremely important to have the baseline right for survival. I'm not denying that. But after the baseline for survival, monetary just is energy. It comes and it goes. And we place such a big kind of importance on thinking that is like the be all and end all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just so interesting. And I think what your point of view on that is as someone who, like you said, like has almost from childhood felt successful, and what's happened after you've felt successful.
Exactly. It was all we're all manifesting. Like you said before, we're all manifesting whether we know it or not. Intentional or unintentional, the goal is to learn how to manifest intentionally so that we can start to create the things that we like in our life. It doesn't mean that I never manifest things unintentionally that I didn't want, of course, because it's a practice. It's a practice that you build over time. But when I was a child, I was already manifesting by seeing what my circumstances were and having exposure to the circumstances that I wanted through movies and TV, and seeing, well, that's what I want, but that's not what I have. And I want to imagine that I am that person. And I used to take napkins at, you know, like you get crayons at a restaurant, and I would like take my dad's napkin and like autograph it with my crayon when I'm like 8 years old, and be like, here's my autograph, save it. It's going to be worth something one day because I'm going to be famous. Like I've been doing that since I was a child. And of course, I had people in my life try to put it down and say, be realistic, go to college and get a job, and, you know, get a real job, and all of that, those projections based on their own experience and pain. And I continued to move forward. And that's why I became so passionate about manifestation, because of not just what I've experienced, but what we've been able to help our clients experience as well. We've had clients move across the country when they thought that would never be a possibility for them, manifest their dream house, buy out the company that they're working for,
start their own business,
move into like their dream condo with a beach view, like that they, you know, we
manifest their dream relationship as well.
Yeah, dream relationship.
It can happen in any way, shape, or form, friendships, whatever. And I think an important point that you said that I think is so important as well is understanding that also what you manifest might look a bit different to what you expected. Like what we said the other day, it was like, oh yeah, you manifested this, it just came in a different packaging.
Sometimes it comes in shit wrapping paper. And you're like, this isn't, it's like
what I ordered.
It's like if you order something small on Amazon and then you open your front door and there's this big ass package and you're like, this is what I ordered, and you have to open up box after box, and then you're like, oh wait, this is exactly what I wanted. It's actually better that it came in the package that it did.
Yes.
And so sometimes, for example, our friendship meeting, I would have never thought I want to go through a really hard breakup so that I am at a point where I feel vulnerable and ready for friendship. But that was what happened. And I'm so thankful that I'm thankful for everything. And I know you are too.
Same.
And our relationship breakups ended differently. I ended up finding my way back to my partner, and you and your partner are on great terms as friends now.
Yeah, really good friends.
Yeah, but that's just an example of sometimes you get something and you're like, this isn't what I wanted. And then after time passes, you're like, oh, it was exactly what I wanted. But not only that, it was what I needed as well for my ultimate growth. Because what I really, really want to manifest, what I really want to cultivate in my life is growth and wisdom. And so the blessings and things that I receive in my life, they give me that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it's, I totally agree with you. I remember just really manifesting the relationship I really wanted, but I kept visualizing it with my ex. And I was like, this is the relationship I want. And I did a whole gratitude letter to the universe. I did all the tools, all the techniques, everything. And it was so funny because I remember writing it the whole time. I felt like there was something off about the letter. And then like now when I look at it, I'm like, oh, it was just off because it was the wrong person, right? So it's like that just didn't work. And I can almost visualize the universe being like, oh, you're just not getting it here. Boom, you've broken up. And I was like, oh my God, what? And I was so devastated at the time. I had moved from Europe to the US for this partnership. So I was like, what the F am I going to do now? Sorry, I swear, not because of profanity, but because of passion. I'm a very passionate person, so I do use the F word.
I say fuck shit all the
No,
time.
I know. But that's a big difference actually culturally between the US and the UK. And I think Americans have this image of British people as being like really polite, and then they meet a British person, they're like, oh my God, you're swearing all the time. And it's like, yeah, actually, it's actually very similar in South America and Spain. Like Spanish people swear all the time, and then South Americans are very polite, and they're just kind of shocked by this like Spanish person from Spain, like
unless they're
unless
they're Mayan and they immigrated to New Jersey, then they are not polite.
But yeah.
Anyways,
digress. But yeah, our cultures. Actually, it's good that we talk about that because our cultures is what really brought us together too. Like your culture and my culture is very similar. But yeah, going back, it's very interesting what kind of wrapping paper your manifestation can come in, and that's another big part of manifesting is being open, right? Because a big part of you being able to manifest is that feeling of freedom that you get, like opening up that freedom. It's like manifesting comes from freedom, it doesn't come from restriction. It's the exact opposite. It's abundance and freedom. It's not restriction. And so sometimes you can get something like you said and be like, what the hell is this? And it can be something so different, and it can be something so painful, or it can just be quite neutral but weird. And then you're like, oh my God, it's like in my face. It's here. It's right here. An example that I had was I met my current partner, who I'm with now, who's definitely my soulmate love, in January of 2020. So 6 months after my breakup. And it was the relationship I'd always wanted. But I was like, what on earth is this? I was like, because I was so radically different from the way I'd been treated my whole entire life. Someone who was available and vulnerable and strong and masculine and determined and all of this. And I was like, I don't understand what this is. And I closed the door on it. And I needed to get ready, essentially. And so I spent the next 6 months getting ready. This is all subconscious. I did not think to myself, I need to get ready for this partner. But you know, I dated and I needed to do some dating, and I went through the whole process and everything. And then it was so that, and spirituality is the core of what, you know, you and I both believe in. But then I went through a big spiritual awakening in July. And it was like ripped my heart open, all about receiving. I was like, oh my gosh, like for the first time I actually felt the ability to receive that sort of romantic love. Or I should actually just say love, because I actually received it a lot it was all from really dear friends, but I felt worthy of it. And I was like, oh no, I deserve this. Like someone was taking care of me. And I was like, old me would have been like, oh, it's fine, go out and party. And instead I was like, no, I'm just going to receive all this care that's been given to me. And when I got back, the man who I'd met 6 months prior, I hadn't spoken to him in a few months. He would check in on me every now and then because he was very sure about me. I wasn't sure about him. And I was like, there was this gut feeling that was like, text him. And I was like, why? Like, why would I text him? And then it was like, see him. And it was like, when we got back together, it was like, oh my God, this just makes so much sense. Now it makes sense. So timing is another important thing with manifestation. You will get what you want. You will. You absolutely will. What you are, what you attract, your desires, your deep manifestations. If you are feeling them, if that feeling of freedom is there, if everything, I can guarantee you are getting it. But you cannot be so hell-bent on the timing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great point. And we could talk about manifestation all day because there's so many elements of it. And we're just scratching the surface of what is it and it being available for everybody. It is available for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're spiritual or not. We happen to be spiritual. It's a big part of our lives. But if you're not, it is available for you. And we created a course on it called Manifest 101 that we're starting soon this month. We have 2 groups for it. And I'm really excited because I just want to share all the stuff that helped me, and same with you. And so it's going to be really exciting. And we have a lot of other projects coming up with Embodied Babe. We are going to plan on doing retreats, a lot more in-person connection, community through sisterhood bonds, and helping women self-heal and go on their self-development journey so that they can become the boss babe that they want to be, whether that means starting a business or shifting their career paths or becoming a amazing mother or whatever that looks like for you. So make sure you stay in touch with what we have going on. And before we hop off, would you like to share where everybody can find you?
Yes. I'm so excited for this year and the Embodied Babe. First of all, you could probably find me just on the Embodied Babe. I'm around everywhere. But my Instagram is at MariaLuisa Ferro. So the Luisa part is just a U, no O. The Latin way of spelling MariaLuisa Ferro. And there I share all sorts of tidbits every now and then. I'm not a big social media person like Bianca's, and I don't constantly post. But I love interacting with people, and I speak a lot with everyone in the DMs. That's how I create my community. So please come and say hi. And yeah, you can find me there. And I am just so thankful for you.
Yeah, thankful for you. Thank you for coming and sharing your magic with my audience. And like I said, check out The Embodied Babe. You can go to theembodiedbabe.com. We do free webinars all the time as well. We do free hours of coaching. We're actually going to do one tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. So make sure you go to theembodiedbabe.com and see what we have going on. If you enjoyed this podcast and it excited you and resonated with you, I would so love it and appreciate it if you shared it on social media, share it with a friend, leave a review on Apple. All of that helps all of this get spread out into the world. So as always, sending you so much love and light.